What's up, and welcome back to the Talk Nutrition Podcast. Today's episode 80, where we're once again going to share part of the Q&As that we did during our Steptember challenge. Again, like we had so many good questions. I had to share them with you. A lot of good stuff that we dove into. This last call was actually like an hour and 10 minutes. So we were once again breaking it up. This week, you're going to hear part one. And then, of course, next week, episode 82 will be the final half of the third Q&A, following still, of the Steptember Challenge Q&A calls. I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a look behind the scenes, if you will, and also going to show you like, hey, if you want to join us next time, which will be in Q1, likely January or March. I do want to double check, maybe March now that I think about it, but you'll hear about it anyway. But in case you're like, hey, you know what, like next time I want to join, awesome. We're gonna do these Q&A calls every single week, and we actually include submitting questions for those Q&As in the point system. So if you want to learn and you actually want to get points for learning, and hey, like basically it's free coaching advice, So make sure to join our free group in the meantime, because we're not going to do any challenges until Q1 of next year, so 2024. But I feel like I'm already rambling on, so let's get into the Q&A, part one of two of the third Q&A call for Steptember. All things supplements. We talked about smoothies, why I got into coaching, actually a whole bunch. Like fasting came up a couple times, specific training, like if you have injuries, if you struggle eating more, like there's a whole bunch in there. So let's get in, and I'll talk to you very soon again. First question from Sabrina. Can I do some specific training to avoid shin splints? A very good question, and I do not know the answer to that question. Unfortunately, I do know that a lot of runners get shin splints, so I would avoid running. But something to avoid it, or maybe I'm not sure if you mean avoid or recover from it. If it's avoiding, yeah, don't run maybe. If it's recovering from, I do not actually know. So that's not my expertise. Next one. I do know some people, by the way, though, who I could ask. If you need help, let me know. Robin says, I have a hard time making food for myself, and I really don't want to make the same food all the time. Do you have some tips or tricks to prep food for the week that let me eat more than, for example, chicken and rice the whole week? Really good question. So what I like to do is, because I feel you, like personally, I don't mind eating a lot of the same stuff. However, I do mix it up, because here's the thing. We need variety from a micronutrient standpoint. Not just that, if we continue to eat the same shit over and over and over again, we can actually give ourselves food sensitivities and some other issues, and micronutrient deficiencies too. So that's stuff that we don't want to happen, obviously. So that being said, I think we should look for a combination, like maybe like the 50-50, right? Basically the combination of being able to repeat stuff, have variety. And hey, if you want variety just from, enjoyment standpoint, great. This is what I see with a lot of people. We want to repeat stuff. It actually helps. If you think about it, if you're on a meal plan, or if you repeat most of your meals or foods, tracking becomes super easy, especially in that initial phase. I tell people like, hey, let's repeat as much as we can. And then once you're consistent, okay, now we can add some variety. That's a better way to go about it. So I'm still going to encourage you to prep, but here's the way I do it. And I call this the salad bar concept, basically. And I did a reel about that too. So what I mean by that, those in the supermarket, there's a salad bar, and you can basically mix and match. You pick whatever foods, options that you like, you throw it together, you have your lunch. Similar idea. Instead of having all these little containers, right, perfectly measured for the whole week, which, by the way, guys, like I wouldn't necessarily recommend prepping for the whole week. I would go for a couple days, and then maybe do a prep on Sunday and then Sunday and Wednesday. Here's the thing: food kind of goes a little soggy, it gets a little boring. Here's what I do. Instead of doing the individual meals, I make my carbs in bulk and my proteins. If I feel like more variety, I'll do two of each. Recently, I just haven't done that. I recently have gone with chicken and rice, but here's the cool thing. We can always change it up. But for this example, let's say we're going to go with ground beef and sweet potato instead. Or we could even do both. Let's do that. For this example, let's say we're going to prep our proteins and chicken, our ground beef and chicken on Sunday. And then we are going to cook a whole bunch of rice together, and we're going to throw in a bunch of sweet potatoes in the oven. Cool. This way, we have a bunch of chicken, a bunch of ground beef in the fridge, a bunch of sweet potatoes, and a bunch of rice. Cool. What we can now do, like I said, that salad bar idea, we can now mix and match and make different combinations throughout the week. So where maybe on Monday, I want to go with the chicken and rice. And by the way, we're still going to add our healthy fats and vegetables, or maybe even a piece of fruit on the side, let's say veggies. Cool. We can now go and add that later on. With veggies, guys, like you could prep it if you wanted to, and it would really work well in a stir fry. But what I prefer is I'll just decide which veggie I want in the moment. And that's a quick add. It doesn't take any time. Healthy fats is usually any kind of like nuts or seeds or extra virgin olive oil, maybe avocado. But okay, like I said, right, we have maybe chicken and rice one day, we add some, right, olive oil and a bell pepper, boom, there you go. Okay, next day, guess what? I actually feel more like ground beef. Okay, ground beef and rice. Okay, cool. Let's have a different vegetable with that. Hey, maybe I'm just going to have a side salad. I'm going to throw lettuce together with onion, carrots, a whole bunch of stuff, tomatoes, whatever I feel like. And I'll add some extra virgin olive oil. Next day, okay, remember we have sweet potato as well. Okay, let's make a combination of sweet potato and chicken. Cool. We add whatever veggies and whatever fats we want. Next day, we can do sweet potato with ground beef, and you get it, right? So we still prep, we still make a whole bunch ahead of time, but we can mix and match for a little bit more variety. Plus, you still save yourself a lot of time. Now, in this example, I'm using 2 of each. What I like to do is I'll just go with one. I recently cooked a whole bunch of chicken, and I had shredded chicken, or pulled chicken, which was great. Super simple. And also there, guys, you can have different spices, etc. There's so many combinations, but we want to think out the box, right? If we don't have if we don't feel like having the same food all the time, then let's not have the same food all the time. But let's also make sure that you do save time and effort, because here's the thing: the more you meal prep, the more time you're going to save, the easier it becomes. So there's a few ways you can do it, right? But I highly recommend at least making some type of protein in bulk and some type of carbohydrate. Have bread ready to go. Have, for example, I use tortilla wraps a lot, and those they just stay well. Just keep it in a package. Those are super easy. And same kind of thing, like even there, right? Have tortilla wraps in your cupboard. Great. Okay, maybe the next day, the third day, you want to change it up again, and you go for those. And then you throw in whatever protein source you want. Again, veggies you can add. Simple as that. Now, and just like that, we can get variety. Next question from Tyre says, my question of the week: I've been on a diet a few weeks now. I can feel it on my bottom that the trousers are starting to get loose. But why does the fat disappear on the bottom before on the stomach? Is this a man thing? Yes and no. Yes, us men, like we mostly store body fat around there. And let me tell you, this is the downside, I guess, of fat loss. Like the area that you want to see go, like the area that you hate the most, is usually the last to go. And that's unfortunately how the body works. That's where we store body fat. From an evolutionary standpoint, it also makes sense. But hey, okay, cool. So for men, right, we mostly store our body fat around the waist. And right, we all kind of hate the love handles. We don't like the spare tire. Guess what? It's the last to go. So it's going to be a matter of just keep going. Just be patient. Just be patient. I mean, I know that because Tyre is a client, I know he's been doing very well, right? we just focus on the process, and then the outcome, right? The weight loss, it'll come. It's just going to be a matter of time. But yeah, it kind of sucks. And then for females, you'll see a little bit more body fat stored around the waist and thighs. But then again, even from one person to the next, it's going to be slightly different. To give you guys an example, for me, it's definitely around my waist and then my face. Like right away, like when I gain weight, like you can see it in my face, like instantly. And I hate it. You know what I mean? But I'm going to have to deal with it if I go into a muscle building phase. But okay. So yeah, keep at it, Terry. I know that it's like we want, like if anything, like we want that area to go first, but it doesn't work that way. It's usually last. So keep going, man. Guru says, I've also been on a cut for a few weeks, doing well. Like Guru's doing super well. So what I've been doing with her is actually increase food. We've done that twice now because she actually lost weight so fast that I was like, hey, you know, we actually need to pump the brakes here. So you see, guys, like we try to get away with as much food as possible for as long as possible. And I see that Danny wants to join as well. Accept him. There we go. Cool. Next question. Or sorry, let me follow up with her because I didn't finish the question. So she's been cutting, it's going super well. And she says, for the last 2 weeks, I've followed the 3-day full body workout program. And today I started week 3. The first exercise is squat, and my body did not respond very well at the last set. So I just stopped the squat, but did the rest of the workout. Okay. Had it just been better to stop the whole workout and done it another day, or was it okay to just finish the workout? No, I think you did the right thing. Because of course, like I'm not fully sure what you mean by it didn't respond well. I'm not sure what happened. Maybe something hurt. Maybe it was just the muscles. Maybe a little, I don't know. Maybe a bit of diet fatigue could be the case, right? Remember too, like we're cutting, so there's not that much fuel. Yeah, I mean, I feel like you did the right thing. Of course, I wasn't there, but sounds good. I mean, you still finished the workout, you know? So if you skip the last set of squats, that's all good. Hey, guys, also for everyone, like I always tell people, like, hey, in a fat loss phase, it's not a performance phase. We train to maintain. We hold on to the muscle that we've already built. We maintain our fitness. Can some people see some muscle gain or some improvements in performance during a cut? Yeah, it's possible, but it's unlikely. And it's not something that we're going to expect or aim for. So I had a chat with someone once, and he's like, yo, I was trying to do, heavy deadlifts, but I couldn't, go as heavy. I was like, dude, you're like fucking like 14 weeks into your cut. Like you, I don't even want you to try and PR here. You know what I mean? I always tell people, like during a cut, just try to chill a little bit when it comes to training. If you notice like, hey, right? Hey, and by the way, I still want you to train, right? But if you notice, hey, it feels a little much, take it down a notch. You're good, you're good. But of course, don't take it out of context. Let's also make sure that we don't just skip a workout, because this becomes a thing for some people then too. It's like, oh, I heard that during a fat loss phase, I train to maintain. Okay, I can get away with it, like not really doing my best. No, we still want to do our best. But long story short, girl, you did the right thing. Jessica says, what supplements do you recommend? So a couple of days ago, I went live in our client community to talk about supplements. And I went on a little bit of a mini rant, I guess, about people just recommending supplements on social media and being like, oh, you need this and that, whatever. And there's definitely a time and place, and I will give you guys a couple basics. For supplementation, I just reviewed someone's blood work today, and we talked about a couple of things that were very low. And we're like, hey, okay, cool. Like in this case, we're going to target those values, and we're going to look at, hey, what can you do in terms of your lifestyle? What can you do in terms of nutrition? We have chronometers, so we can see micronutrients too, right? To, right, in quotes, fix that. Because we can learn a lot, especially for blood work. So with supplements, guys, I even tell my clients this. I'm like, hey, right, I have some recommendations based on the research that seems totally safe. But I mean, it's your responsibility to look into this, you know what I mean? To make an educated decision, but especially to not go online and be like, oh shit, I heard this influencer or whoever who just happens to have a very big following, right? Recommend this supplement. I need to get it too. Guess what? 99% of the time, these people post something, and it's especially with athletic greens that you see a lot of these days, which they give you a big cut. So like that's what people, that's why people share that shit. They might be using it, sure, because they get it for free, but it's mostly because they get, that much of a kickback. But okay. So Jessica's question, what supplements do you recommend? Generally speaking, a few that I do usually recommend to virtually everyone, or that I usually say, and I don't even say, hey, you need this. I say like, hey, look into this. I think this is likely a good idea to take. And this is what I personally would take. So first of all, protein, right? Protein powder, usually a whey isolate, going to be best simply for convenience. And it's going to help you hit your protein. It's very high quality protein option there. And yeah, I mean, that's my number one. Creatine, also virtually everyone can benefit from it. Most researched sports supplement out there. I mean, the more they study it, and they have for many, many years, the more reason they find to take it. Anywhere from muscle gain to endurance to bone health to offsetting sleep deprivation, by the way, Danny. I do think that would be higher doses. So I think offsetting sleep deprivation was maybe 10 grams. I would have to look that up. Typically like 5 grams is like the usual recommendation there. Not saying that it's going to fix things, but it could at least help a little bit potentially. And then also cognitive performance, so being able to like basically work through difficult tasks where you have to do a lot of thinking. A lot of cool stuff there. Yeah, creatine, definitely recommend that as well. So we have protein so far, we have creatine, and then a fish oil. If we don't eat cold water fish, like fatty fish, like salmon, a couple times a week, maybe 2 to 3 times, it's likely a good idea to have our omega-3s. And then what you want to look for is EPA and DHA. Those are the omega-3 fatty acids that we want to get. Usually like 2 to 3 grams of those combined. So what else? Vitamin D. I actually got a question from Celia today for this Q&A about vitamin D. Almost, I mean, it's difficult to say, but maybe not almost everyone, but a lot of people are deficient. A lot of people are deficient. I'm fucking like every time like I'm surprised by the amount of people I know up here where I live, where we don't get any sunlight for multiple months in a row, where also the rest of the year, the weather is not that great. We don't get that much sun. We wear a lot of clothing. Like we don't get that much sunlight on our skin, AKA we're not getting a lot of vitamin D from the sun or through the sun, right? Through the process. So we need to be supplementing that shit for health for many reasons. And like it's almost like rarely anyone does that here, or barely anyone. So now going back down into Europe and our friends across the US, Canada, let's think about how much time do we spend outside directly in actual sunlight? Likely very little. I've seen blood work of a bunch of people recently, and vitamin D is almost like the one that's, if it's tested, it's almost always low for so many people. So I would almost be like, hey, like we should just be taking it anyway because we spend so much time inside. And you'd be looking for 4,000 up to 5,000 international units. So that's IUs. You don't really have to go higher. Like lower could be okay if you live somewhere where you get a little bit of sunlight, but usually 4 to 5,000, and then 10,000 is like the upper safe limit. You do not have to go that high, just so you know. So there's no point, but like 4 to 5 usually does the trick. And then I think those are the ones. So we covered protein, we said vitamin D, creatine, fish oil, and I am a big fan of magnesium as well. Magnesium would be my last kind of like 5th one that I think everyone can benefit off. I see a lot of people being deficient there as well. We don't get as much through food anymore. It used to be more in the soil. And Ben, in the meantime, was asking vitamin D. Yeah, no, so you actually want to get 4,000 per day. 2,000 would be like the lower end. But that would be if you actually get some sunlight in as well, I would say. Usually, if we want to be on the safe side, 4,000, maybe 5,000. I take 5,000 every single day, and I actually have normal levels now. So, where was I again? Yeah, magnesium. Sorry, guys. We used to have more in the soil, which would then go into our food, which of course would end up in us, but it's a little bit less now. A lot of people are also deficient. If you ever struggle with restless leg syndrome, which by the way is something I'm currently feeling now, and I also recently ran out of magnesium. I'm not sure if that's placebo or a real thing, but like um, magnesium, right? That is one that helps there, and it can definitely help with sleep as well. So when I look for a magnesium glycinate or bisglycinate, if you get other, forms like magnesium oxide or chloride, those kind of things, usually a little bit less quality and will often cause digestive upset. 200 to 400 milligrams. I like a little bit more, 400, 500, but right, depends on the person, how much you weigh, right, how tall you are, like how big the body is basically. But check examine.com, and that's going to be my last little thing here for supplements. Examine.com. Whatever supplement you hear about, you type it in there, you look it up first, and then you make your decision. There's a lot of stuff you can learn there. It's really cool. It's a really good database. A little bit of water. Okay, Carrie says, here's my question for the week. What do you do when you don't feel hungry? Sometimes I struggle without feeling hungry, and I need some tips on what to do to finish up my day when I'm just not hungry. Okay, good point. I like to look at your meal frequency. How often are we eating? How structured is it? What foods are we eating? Can we maybe include some that are less filling? Can we have a glass of orange juice? That like a glass is like 30 carbs, I think, like 120 calories. Those kind of things, right? Can we identify the moment where we end up often, right? Because you mentioned not being able to finish out my day. Okay, so it sounds like we may have to catch up on calories sometimes. Okay, let's avoid that by being proactive, and let's maybe have a little bit more where we can actually have it. So this is where we need to pay attention to those things. A lot of times it's going to come down to we're just busy, we forget those kind of things. A lot of things is going to be structure, type of foods, actually having that 80-20, like actually having that 20% can help. When it comes to hunger, I hate to say this, but especially during specific phases like fat loss, like reverse dieting, hey, I get so many people who are under eating who have a hard time getting to maintenance, which is literally just like eating enough for what you actually need. Sometimes we just have to suck it up and work through that. And I'm not saying that that's the case here, but sometimes we have to suck it up. We need to accept that the body is currently not in a great spot where, hey, hunger, satiety, they're all like those hormones are all out of whack. I've seen people be on 1,200 calories and not be hungry at all. Like that's not a good thing. Guess what happens? We slowly increase food. They have a hard time eating more. We stick to it. We stick to it. And then all of a sudden I get a check-in and it's like, hey, you know what? My appetite is coming back. I'm actually more hungry now. And then we're like, right, creating more momentum there. So Carrie, we can talk more about this in your check-in because I do need a little bit more context, but I would look at those kind of options, right? And the second she says, what about motivation? Any tips to keep your head in the game on hard days or when you're drained? I'm on the rebound now from the last weeks, but I know it won't be my last rough day in my journey. I mean, let's be honest, guys. Life sucks sometimes. And sometimes it's really fucking cool, right? We have amazing days and we have days where it kind of sucks. They both happen and they both never last. Usually it's anywhere in between on the spectrum, in between amazing and life sucks. I mean, first of all, we just need to accept that. That's a big one. first of all, we need to do the thing that's sometimes uncomfortable, but in a way, it's sometimes it's good news, right? It's like, hey, okay, life sucks sometimes, but we always know, right? What comes after rain, sunshine. All joking aside, though, it's true, right? I guarantee that there's a bunch of hard times that you can think of in your life in the past, right? That you also overcame, that were followed up by amazing times. Now, on the other hand, and this is where maybe it's a little bit of bad news, that also means that when we are on a roll and we feel great and we're excited and life is fucking cool, there's also going to be time, probably soon, where that's not going to be the case anymore. And that's kind of something we need to accept, first of all. Now, to your point, any tips for keeping your head in the game? It's that one. It's knowing that you can always do the things that are within your control. Because here's the thing, and I also kind of know what Carrie's been going through. So, but there's a lot of stuff outside of her control. And it's usually when we are having a hard time, in quotes, usually that ties back to things outside of our control, which we cannot directly influence anyway, which means that we still control how we respond to the situation. Keeping our head up, I mean, it's hard. Like, I go through ups and downs as well. Sometimes you're super stressed. Sometimes you feel amazing. Sometimes you're anxious. We need to figure out, and this is where there's no one right answer. We need to figure out what helps you. Is it a being motivated enough to stick to the plan situation? Okay, well, in that case, fuck motivation. Like, let's just find out a system. Let's create systems around the things we have a hard time with, so that when the time comes, when we are not motivated, we can still do it. The work that you do when you're not motivated, like, that's when you make the difference. That's when you really make a difference. To be honest, guys, this health and fitness thing, if you are on a roll and you're tracking your macros and it's easy and you're going to the gym and everything is great, that's the easy shit. It's what happens when you're not motivated. It's what happens when you go through a period where, even though you want to lose weight, you still have to eat more and you have to go back to maintenance for multiple months, where we have to do something now to eventually see the results after multiple months of hard work, right? It's not going to be easy. And there will be many rough days on our journey. That goes for every single person in every single phase, and that is okay. So a lot is maybe acceptance, and also learning how to catch ourselves maybe when we notice, hey, we're being negative or maybe slow or whatever you want to call it, right? Or stress or whatever it is. I think if we can create little like if-then plans, right? Hey, if I notice I feel like this, or if I have this feeling or thought, whatever, I'll do X. And I have a few, methods like that for myself. Sometimes I have anxiety, right? Or stress, or I'm trying to work through a project and I'm not getting there yet, or I'm doing something new that feels overwhelming. Well, I have two things that I do. First, I would just always meditate 10, 20 minutes. I try to do 20 usually. Not even like, because I won't even always call it meditation, I guess, because I'm not sure if it would be considered like being in like a meditative state. But even just sitting with your eyes closed and with your own thoughts and just kind of like working through shit and then thinking about stuff, like, that can really help. But then also putting it on paper, that's a big one. I think when we can extract that from our brains and put it on paper and work through things depending on the situation, and hey, what can we do, right? Brainstorm, do whatever you got to do, write shit down, right? I think we can figure a lot of things out. And that's a lot of what coaching is even. Do I have a lot of tips? Yeah. But if we know specifically what you're going through and we ask the right questions, you likely will be able to come up with the answer. So let's follow up about that too in your check-in. We'll talk soon. Kaya says, for overall health, is it better to do strength training or keep doing what we're currently doing, getting those steps in the long run? both. It's not an either or, it's we do both. For overall health, steps are huge, as we talked about in the first Q&A. However, strength training, building muscle, is huge as well. Like for body composition, it's more important, obviously. For just overall health, I'm not going to call either steps or training more healthy or more important. We need to be doing both. 8 to 10K steps, plenty. Feel free to stick to 8. Like, that's already great. But if you can do some weightlifting, build that muscle, having that muscle, like that's the biggest thing. Like, we really need to invest in ourselves and build a good amount of muscle now that we can, right? So that when we're older, when it becomes more difficult, we're kind of good already. And then we eat our protein, right? Like I said, we need to keep doing that as well, if we're talking like long-term health. Now, anything else? Yeah, you also want to do cardio. I think cardio is often demonized, and I'm a little guilty of talking about the downsides of cardio a little too much, because I see a lot of people do cardio for fat loss, and that is completely wrong. And that's also why I talk about that a lot. But we should be doing cardio, absolutely. Like we should be doing cardio. Not all the time, not too much, but we should be doing it for sure. So ideally, we're just active in general, which we can track by tracking steps, right? Which, by the way, we kind of use that measure to just become more active. And then, hey, maybe one day it's just something that we do, so we don't even have to track steps anymore. And maybe sometimes you want to check, and then you're like, okay, I'm good. Keep lifting weights, build that muscle, do some cardio. For most people, maybe once a week, maybe a couple sessions, or 30-minute like zone 2 workout. Boom, there you go.